on people of faith. We began the last time with Anna Mao, and in conversation with Nan, following that time, she said, why don't we talk about Samuel Weir? Nan pastored a church in Dayton, Ohio, which was predominantly African American. And so she brings us a rich appreciation for African American heritage. And Samuel Weir, who was born in Virginia, ended up in Ohio. So I'm glad that we can talk a little bit about Samuel Weir. I'm going to begin for the first few minutes to talk about his birth and his growing up in Virginia, and then when he moved to Ohio, Nan is going to take over from there. Slavery has been around for many years. One estimate was 5,000 years, going clear back to Mesopotamia, the Sumerian culture, where they had slaves. Within the Western Church, we have the doctrine of discovery, which was passed in 1452 or enacted, which was saying that Western European countries, kings, had the right to invade, to capture, and subjugate non-Christians. So that was beginning the official practice of slavery within Western Christianity. I will say that doctrine of discovery was repudiated by the Vatican in 2023, so that no longer stands. But then the first documented slave to come to the United States was in 1619. So slavery has not only been ingrained in Western Church, but also carried over here to the United States. The Quakers were the first religious body in the United States to ban members from having slaves, and that was in 1776. That was the first church to officially take action not to allow slavery among its members. The first action by the Church of the Brethren, or what became the Church of the Brethren movement, was an annual meeting in 1782 where it was declared that members should not have slaves. And I will say that it was helpful as we move now into Samuel Weir to refer to several things that Nan and I have found. One was an article by Kerman Thomason in the Messenger in June 1977. And that's a very interesting read, to read about his summary of Samuel Weir's life. His research, or his article, was based on a pamphlet that was done by Landon West in the 1890s. If any of you have ever heard that name, Landon West, he was the father of Dan West, who started the Heifer Project many, many years ago. But Landon West was also living in Ohio. But he did this, he visited Samuel Weir late in his life, Samuel Weir's life. Samuel Weir died in 1884. And so it was about 1880 or so that Landon West visited with Samuel Weir, and so got his story, which was published in the 1890s. So we have that. We have the Messenger available. We also have Roger Sappington's book, Brethren in the New Nation, which has a little bit of that brochure in it, which I'll be referring to. But also there's a history of Southern Ohio and a history of Virginia that gives more information about Samuel Weir, and also annual conference minutes from the 1800s related to slavery. In 1782, the action taken by annual meeting was this: it has been unanimously considered that it could not be permitted in any wise by the church that any member should or could purchase Negroes to keep them as slaves. So the first action was by the Quakers in 1776. 6 years later, a similar action was taken by the Brethren. And then looking at annual conference minutes from the 1800s, over and over and over again, it emphasizes that brethren cannot hold slaves. Samuel Weir was born in 1812 in Bath County, Virginia. And then he was raised in Botetourt County. And perhaps you've heard of Botetourt County, which is close to Roanoke. So it was in the Roanoke area that he was raised. At an early age of 12, in 1824, Samuel was sold to Andrew McClure. There was not a great deal of slavery in that area because this was more German farmers or Scotch-Irish, which Andrew McClure was, and so Samuel was his only slave. And it was kind of a field hand for him and worked together closely with him. At the age of 31, Samuel was freed by McClure. That was in 1843. And this is how it happened. McClure's son, a young son, was tragically thrown from a horse and killed. The McClures, through their grief and also through their spiritual awakening, desired to join a local Brethren church, and that was called the Laymantown Church, which is in Botetourt County. And they were told, based on the decision of annual meeting over and over again, that first they had to free Samuel, and they did, 1843. Peter Need, who was another minister from Ohio, was also ministering in Virginia during this time. And so he was the one who baptized the McClures and talked with them about the importance of freeing Samuel. Shortly after that, Samuel requested baptism, and he was baptized May 14, 1843. Now, one of the issues, even though slavery was discouraged or outlawed among the brethren, still there was the racial issues that continue to this day that affected the church. When people were baptized at that time, they were welcomed into the church with a holy kiss. So here was a slave, a black slave, who was being received into membership, and they think the first slave that was freed to be received into the Church of the Brethren. How should he be received? And this is what Landon West wrote. He applied to the Brethren for membership and was baptized by Brother Need on Sunday, May 14, 1843. And he, being the first African member received by the church in that part of Virginia, and was soon a question as to how he should be received by the brethren after baptism, whether with the right hand of charity or with the kiss of charity, or with the right hand of fellowship alone. But after some consideration by the church, it was decided to receive him with the right hand of fellowship, but without the salutation. And in this manner, he was received as a member. And I think that underlines our situation today. Even though brethren have long been against slavery, racism still continues, and it's something we need to continue to work at. It was decided after his baptism that it was best for Samuel to be escorted to Ohio, because at that time, even if a slave was free, they could easily be captured, sent down to Louisiana or Mississippi or some other place, and then enslaved again. B.F. Mumaw, a minister in the church in Botetourt County, took Samuel to Ohio in October 1843. They took the road, and it was a road that was traveled a lot by the brethren between Ohio and Virginia. Probably John Klein also traveled that area. But they arrived at the mouth of the Big Sandy River, which fed into the Ohio River, Ironton, Ohio, or close to Ashland, Kentucky. And this is what Landon West wrote about this entering into Ohio. Upon reaching the Ohio shore, Brother Mumaw said to Samuel, "Sam, you are a free man, and on free soil where you can enjoy your freedom as all other free men." And Brother Mumaw said, "He did not, while on the way, seem to be affected in the least, but now it appears to me that his whole being was affected, and that he now felt as he had never felt before." So Nan will take it from the Ohio River into the state of Ohio.
So it was. The brothers Weir and Mumaw, black and white, set out on that last leg of their journey into Ohio. Elder Thomas Major was not at home when the Virginia travelers arrived at his cabin, but Sister Sarah Major greeted them with generous hospitality. Sarah and Thomas had only been married the previous year, and they had been on the Ohio frontier less than a year themselves. She and Sam became fast friends at once. At Paint Creek Church, Sam was welcomed warmly, and after the regular services the Sunday of his arrival, a meeting was held to arrange for his care. William Bryant volunteered to house him, saying, "I'll find a home for him. He can come and live with us." And Sam did. From then on, the two men always referred to each other as members of one family. Brother Bryant said years later, "I regard Sammy as an example to me in many things, but especially in that of religion." In the Bryant home, Sam's character was soon evident, as was his intelligence and ambition. To Sam, though, his utter lack of education was a humiliating reminder of his slave past that he felt compelled to erase. He recalled, "We were all sitting around the fire one night when I said, I wish I had had a chance to go to school when I was young. And at this, Mother Bryant spoke up and said, well, Sammy, you're not too old to learn. You can still learn. If you say you'll try it, I'll have Katie here teach you." Katie was the Bryant's 10-year-old granddaughter. And she became the enthusiastic teacher of this man more than 20 years her senior. Sam recalled that it was very hard, but he worked with Katie all winter, and he learned his ABCs and started to learn words. A neighbor of the Bryants recalled, "Oh, I was once with Sam at a threshing. He and I were together on the straw stack, and whenever the machine stopped and others were in idle conversation, Sam would sit on the straw, learning to spell from a scrap of an old spelling book that he carried with him everywhere. He was never idle." Sam said, after Miss Katie worked with me, I went to school 2 winters and to a colored teacher over in Highland County. Some of you may know that the town of Hillsboro, Ohio, that's Highland County, where I studied spelling and reading and arithmetic. And then when I found I could read the Bible, I was satisfied. And I gave up all other books but that one. The Bible has been my delight, and I have read it through several times. It was through that Highland County teacher, who was also a Baptist minister, that Sam received the call to preach. He said, at their Baptist meetings where I often went, my teacher would urge me to get up and talk. At last I told him I'd try, but when the day came, I felt so very weak I thought I could not, and so I didn't get up. But I didn't feel good about it, and then I thought I would never do so anymore. But that same resolve and zeal that had spurred Sam to learn to read and write sustained him, and he was soon gaining a reputation as a speaker among the black congregations in the community. The same prejudice was present among the Ohio brethren that Sam had experienced in Virginia. He was a free man and was welcomed as a member of the church, but beyond that, the brethren's sensitivities could not allow the white members to commune with their black brother. When I preached about Brother Sam's story at the Dayton, Ohio congregation I served, which was half black and half white, the congregation nodded, yep. They knew what it was to be told that they were welcome at a white church, only to find out that it was lip service. Thankfully, when Lower Miami had integrated in the 1950s, most were warmly welcomed. At the time, Pastor Angeny worked hard to assure a complete welcome, but there were some difficult times and a few white members left. While I was pastor, the congregation pointed out, almost every church says, all are welcome on their church signs. But they say, Nan, do they really mean that? Is it that way in many places? Is it lip service only? Unfortunately, it seems to be. Well, back to Sam's story. Sentiment not being favorable to admitting blacks to white meeting houses, Sam was compelled to meet mostly with his own race. And the churches were always of other denominations, not brethren. Under those circumstances, weaker persons might have despaired or grown bitter, not Sam Weir. Sam said, well, I had been preaching around at the meetings of the colored people and of other churches for 4 or 5 years. So when the brethren heard that I was trying to preach, they told me to come out from town and preach a sermon for the white folk at the Bush meeting house. And they said if they then thought that I could preach, they would put me at it in earnest. The minister, Joseph Kelso, also asked me to come, and I told him I would. So one day when I was president, he invited me to come and preach in 5 weeks. They heard he was trying to preach. Sounds to me like he was definitely preaching. I wonder what made them think they could judge better than the denominations he had been preaching to for several years. The meeting was held in August of 1849. It was reported that about 1,000 people were present, and all of them white, but Sam. That's a tough one. My folks would always talk about that. Sam said, well, I spoke 39 minutes by Brother Kelso's watch, and I spoke from the words in Hebrews 11, 1 and 2, a very familiar setting. I've never seen prettier behavior in all the preaching I've done than I had that day. I thought that was an interesting way to put it, prettier behavior. Unanimous voices gave Sam his charge as a minister, and he was, quote, instructed to go to his own race and hold meetings wherever opportunity was offered. What? You acknowledge he's a great preacher, but you still don't want him in your all-white church? That's hypocrisy in my book. But I suppose grace is needed, given the culture and the history of the time. The question is, have we gotten past that hypocrisy today? The loneliness that Sam knew through the rest of his long life is evident from even the scantiest summary of it. He never married, and for the first 16 years of his ministry, he never had a brother or sister as a helper. Finally, in 1865, a black couple, Harvey and Martha Carter, asked for baptism. Sam's friends, Thomas and Sarah Major, were now living in Highland County too, so they were sent for, and on an August Sunday, they baptized the Carters in Paint Creek near Frankfort, Ohio. In 1872, Sam was given the authority by the church to baptize and to solemnize marriages. He continued holding meetings in and around Frankfort and around Circleville on the Scioto River, and his little flock grew slowly, sometimes through occasional baptisms, and a few times people from Virginia moved in and had transfers by letter. It was not until 1881 that ordination as an elder came for Sam at a love feast conducted by Thomas Major and Landon West. This gave Sam the oversight of all the black brethren of the Scioto Valley. Sam, as always, was grateful for the trust that he received from the church, and he put his whole being into that work for his district. Unfortunately, his health was already failing, and he died in March of 1884. Samuel Weir's real achievement was in what he endured as a person and as a Christian. For over 30 years, he was a slave, a piece of property to be bought and sold. But it never broke his spirit, cost him his identity, or made him less of a person. He remained an honest, kind-hearted man who never shirked his work or lifted a hand in anger. When he joined the brethren, he suffered the humiliation of being denied the holy kiss. But he was superior enough to overlook the implied charge of inferiority. Undaunted by the prejudice to which he was constantly subjected, Sam never allowed it to affect or determine how he himself would serve God and neighbor. Amen. Oh, there you are.
We wanted to intentionally leave time for any questions or discussion these last few minutes. Do you have any questions or comments? Was this a person that you had heard of before? Yeah. You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah. Well, thank you again for coming today, and we'll probably continue a series like this of people of faith, and the next one is going to be Ira France, who was a Church of the Brethren pastor, was a resident here at Timbercrest, and was a poet, and was blind in his last years, and also a grandfather of Jan Rhodes. So I knew him when I worked here at Timbercrest over 50 years ago. So
When you were a mere babe.
when I was a mere babe. Thank you for coming.